Hey there, it's Evan Nathaniel Grimm, and welcome to my August forecast. I'm going to get you ready for August, the energy you can expect, and I will be covering the key themes and some of my global predictions, and then I will dive into the horoscopes for each zodiac sign. It is definitely a month that carries on some of the chaos of July, but of course, there are ways to shape the energies to your advantage, which I'll talk about today. And sharing my screen right here, giving you a visual aid. Obviously going to talk about more than just August 4th here, but just for a little bit, I'm going to be just hovering on this part of the month. So what is August fundamentally about? Well, we are living again in the aftermath of not only the chaos of July, but specifically the Mars-Uranus conjunction. The Mars-Uranus conjunction was playing out really from early July through the middle of July. And as we witnessed in the political sphere and in the IT space, there was a lot of hectic and frenetic and unexpected energies. I just want to revisit, by the way, some of the titles that I was drafting for July back in June for the July episode. And, the titles were Nothing Will Be the Same. The Other Shoe is About to Drop. The Fierce Winds of Change. Built to Fall. Table flipping, managing chaos, disorder, tumultuous, maelstrom, finding meaning in the mess. These were some of the images and words and visuals that I had when I was conceiving of July back in June. And obviously, in a lot of ways, July played out to a T what astrologers like myself expected. I was talking about Trump and Trump's chart in mid-July, going way back to November 2023. I talked about also, Biden probably would step aside from the ticket. And I also talked about, a potential either cybersecurity incident or some kind of like IT fiasco. And it all played out exactly as astrologers who do the research on these things expected in a lot of ways. But I think it was still surprising, like even for astrologers who are kind of on the ball with these things. So, the Mars-Uranus conjunction, I think is already pretty clearly like the defining moment, I think, of 2024 in terms of like, it is that inflection point. It is that domino, that first domino that is going to really tell an ever-changing story between now and the end of the year, and especially during the election time period. So I think that August, again, it does carry some tension and conflict from July, although from a different lens, and it will probably affect different industries and sectors. And of course, the energy will be experienced differently for you from what July was. But just to talk about some of the, key transits here. So first of all, we do have the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, simultaneous with a square to Saturn and really a square to Venus in Virgo. We do have Mercury retrograde pretty much the entire month. And again, just to highlight this, Mars and Gemini. And the energy that I think really shines through here, which I want to just focus on right away, rather than giving you the spread of all the transits immediately and sort of drowning us in details. I really just want to like lead with the transit that I think will define August. So again, Mars conjunct Uranus defined July, not only July, but probably the whole year. But now in August, we do have Mars, Jupiter coming together to square Saturn. So before I go through some global predictions of how I think that will play out, just want you to think about it from obviously a personal standpoint first. And so what's really going to happen here for really every sign, regardless of what your rising sign is that you're going to have to balance competing priorities because Mars acts quickly, swiftly, and it chases after things that it sort of adamantly desires. And Jupiter is really amplifying the energy of Mars there. It's enhancing it, and it's almost it's reaching out for more. And so the desires could be overwhelming. And especially with Jupiter being even like travel or the future, it's like people want to chart a new course in their lives or travel somewhere new or or whatnot. But then it's squaring Saturn, which is a planet that delays and limits. It's a planet that maintains tradition and order and conserves and preserves, while Mars and Jupiter are trying in the yang masculine sign of Gemini to really lunge forward. Saturn in Pisces in the yin feminine sign with Saturn there. It's really trying to rein us in and hold us back. So every sign, which I'll talk about during the horoscope section, is going to have to balance this, again, desire to expand their horizons with the reality of the responsibilities that you have to adhere to, or the obligations you have to fulfill. You know, it's kind of a trade-off. Every sign has to go through some kind of balancing act and trade-off with that Mars-Jupiter conjunction square Saturn. But now I'm going to talk about more of the collective implications of this and ramifications. So what I'm really seeing with these squares here, first of all, I could see how with Gemini being a sign of communication, I could see how there could be some sort of issues in the telecommunications space. And by the way, this square, and actually I should just jump to this on the screen here so that you're not confused by the timing. The square really starts to take shape in terms of its like exactitude in middle of August. So really we're talking around like August 13th through 17th. And so I'm just going to park it, you know, let's just say August 14th for now, because I do think with that Sag moon creating a grand mutable cross with Venus, like I think we should dwell on this time period. August 14th approximately is probably the biggest moment of the month. But anyways, with Gemini being a sign of communication, it's ruled by Mercury. That's square to Saturn. Saturn restricts, Saturn constricts, Saturn cuts off. And so, and Mars overheats, and Mars also creates frustration. So what I'm seeing here, first and foremost, in my sort of mind's eye, when I'm sort of channeling before I make these videos, and I'm channeling, of course, as I record this, but I really see probably some sort of breakdown in the telecommunications space. I don't know if it's like a wireless network operator that just suddenly you know, is compromised or has some kind of breakdown, but I see a lot of people being unable to communicate with someone. Maybe their phone is not sending text messages, maybe yeah, calls aren't going through at a certain point. It's also possible that electrical grids and utilities could shut down, especially around August 19th when we reach that full moon in Aquarius ruled by Uranus, with Uranus at the midpoint of the T-square with the sun and moon. Now, some other predictions, though, when it comes to Gemini, we also think about travel and transportation. So in the middle of August, I could see how, for a number of reasons, travel may be restricted, or there may be a lot of delays because it's squaring Saturn in Pisces. And of course, we will have Neptune being squared eventually in Pisces there. It could be inclement weather. Inclement weather will probably be the norm in August. And I think there will, and I'm not going to pinpoint which region per se. I think that likely it would be in the southeast of the US. But with the full moon in Aquarius also potentially conjuring maybe some kind of like geological issue like earthquakes or something, you know, it could be somewhere else too. And the inclement weather could delay or cancel flights or something. I'm not, and now when I say this, by the way, like I'm not telling you to, you know, not fly or anything. I'm not telling you to avoid flying, but I'm just giving you a heads up that in middle of August, if you are traveling, that you should just make plans for delays. And when it comes to Pisces also being in a lot of ways like pathogens, maybe there are travel restrictions because of some kind of scare or spread of a pathogen. And also, I am wondering if there's some sort of like major. I'm just seeing like something disappearing into the water potentially. Like I really think that there is a slight risk of that. Like, because Pisces is the ocean, Pisces is the water, and with like the Mars, Saturn square, Jupiter, Saturn square, it feels like, yeah, there's like some, you know, there's some traveling going on, but square Saturn and Pisces, I just feel like there's some kind of confusing situation where it's like we don't know where something is, we don't know where something went. And keep in mind that Mars is squaring the position it was in when it was in Pisces during the Baltimore Bridge collapse. Now, again, I'm not saying that it's a repeat of that, but it is a major aspect, a tense aspect to that point when Mars and Saturn were both in Pisces. And when Mars and Saturn were in Pisces as well, we did even have some conflict in the Middle East kind of happening through bodies of water. So anyways, with that square to Saturn, yeah, I'm wondering if there's some maybe even type of like boating accident and that makes headlines, or maybe a drunk driving accident or incident, or just some kind of major accident in the headlines. And then with Pisces ruling like medicine and pharmaceuticals, maybe one of these accidents is influenced by some kind of substance that someone is taking. And speaking of pharmaceutical, I think there could be some pharmaceutical related litigation or something at this time. I know I'm kind of zipping through a lot of predictions here, but I wanted to kind of like go through them swiftly and not dwell on them for too long for the sake of the video. But also again with with Gemini being the lungs, Saturn and Pisces is bringing up, I think, the sort of topic of health. Maybe there is a respiratory illness that's going around of some kind. I'm not even saying it's the one that you're thinking of right now. It could be something else. And also with Pisces being oil, I could see how oil supplies are somehow constrained, probably through the Middle East and tied to the conflict escalating in the Middle East. Maybe it's happening around the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe Iran is involved in this. But yeah, I could see some oil prices changing here through limited oil supplies. And that is also due to, again, the escalation of conflict, which I do foresee in the Middle East. And I'll talk about why in a bit. But now I also want to mention in the political sphere, I think there's some like fragmentation in the Democratic Party. The Democratic National Convention is during this Mars-Jupiter conjunction square Saturn. So it feels like maybe there's some drama, which there always is with politics, but like some people within the party talking smack about one another, and it just creates a little bit of like just divisions within the party. And also maybe in terms of like, and sorry, just quickly, whenever I talk about politics, I'm not inserting my personal opinion about any of the candidates. Just remember that this is objective, research-driven astrology. I'm not here to try to convince you to vote for a certain person. That's just not that's not the role that I play. I'm a messenger and I'm just channeling as I go through and as I do research. So it is not, you know, there's no agenda here. I really have no desire to create any sort of, again, really any drama in that way anyways. Like I just think that if I'm trying to make predictions, I have to be objective at the end of the day. And like if I insert my subjective viewpoint, it just gets compromised there. So anyways, yeah, there's some political upheaval here and unrest within the Democratic Party. And I say the Democratic Party, again, not because I'm trying to reflect a personal opinion, but because literally the national convention for that party is happening in mid-August. So maybe there are certain factions posturing to get like certain positions on the party platform, and there's an infusion of kind of like new blood in the party, because as we saw in July with the 2 Capricorn full moons and like Biden stepping aside, we are transitioning out of the old guard. So, in many ways in our society. So as that happens, it's ushering in, new ideas, which is Gemini's ideas. And with Jupiter, new visions of the future that various politicians or party leaders are trying to establish. But then it squares Saturn, which is tradition, and Saturn is saying, nope, not yet. You're not ready. Like maybe the party will not actually coalesce around some of the more progressivist ideals because of that Saturn square. Now to continue on a personal level there with these transits, I think in mid-August, you just want to be careful with what you say. I could even see like some kind of like leak of messaging or conversations, like, and maybe this is more for a high profile figure, but I think in middle of August, there's some kind of like leaked, yeah, messaging thread or phone call that really puts someone in a bad light. But even on a personal level, like you have to be very cautious with what you say, especially with Mercury retrograde. But Mars in Gemini has a really sharp tongue. Mars and Gemini will say too much at the wrong time. And with the square to Saturn, it's like Saturn is sort of that authority, that scrupulous, yeah, that scrupulous authority figure that is sort of, it's the eye in the sky watching what you say. So yeah, I mean, there could even be some sort of startling headline story about something related to surveillance of conversations there. But yeah, I think a lot of people will be regretting what they say in the middle of August. And so you just want to make sure that you're not sending messages or speaking so freely that you end up, revealing more than you want, or you end up compromising, sharing compromising information about somebody. But maybe it won't even be possible because, like I said, there could be some issues with the telecom companies. And that may not be because of an IT issue or a cybersecurity hack. It could be just from weather, some kind of weather-related disaster. And again, I want to stress this, like there's not just storms brewing in the sky. There's like literal, well, sorry, there's not, I flipped it in my head. There's not just storms brewing politically, there's storms brewing in the sky. So, um, it's not the greatest month for weather. I just feel like there's a lot of like, there's again probably the southeast of the US, but there's areas where there's just going to be relentless rainstorms, hurricanes, most likely, and maybe in other places earthquakes around August 19th. But there's some combination of like inclement weather, cybersecurity incidents. I just think it's really hard to reach people in mid-August, and it's really hard to get to a certain destination, and it's also really hard to like speak generally without pissing somebody off. So as you can imagine, August is a bit of a messy month. And because Mercury's retrograde and the Mars-Uranus conjunction happened in the pre-shadow phase of Mercury retrograde, the CrowdStrike outage is not, there's still spillover effects of that probably. And so because of that, I want to highlight the airline industry. I think there's something with the airline industry this month that is really making headlines. And again, it might be, well, again, it might be oil prices or something changing the cost of flying. Maybe it goes up, but maybe there's some cascading impacts of the CrowdStrike incident that we're starting to realize and how it affects the airline industry. And I just think the airline industry is going through a lot of change at this time. And again, I don't want to like create any fear, but it just feels like there's some incident there where something's disappearing into the water. I just don't know where it's going there. But it could also be a boating incident. I feel like there's some kind of like high profile boating incident going on in August. And maybe it's in the Middle East, maybe it's somewhere else, but I think some combination of all these things, like will have I think that somehow oil is involved in this. So again, yeah, definitely a lot to cover there. Now, the next like major theme I want to address before I start to get into like some of the technical day-to-day transits, and then I'll of course do the horoscopes, is Mars conjunct Aldebaran. Mars is going to align with Aldebaran, which is a fixed star associated with the Crusades, religious wars, and military strategy around August 3rd and 4th. Now, we had Jupiter near Aldebaran recently, and that led me to predict that likely there was probably some escalation of conflict in the Middle East. Even though Jupiter is a benefic planet, I think that with everything going on in the Middle East, activations of Aldebaran are very foreshadowing and foreboding. And with Mars, the malefic planet, conjunct Aldebaran there, look back through charts throughout history. When Mars is near Aldebaran, oftentimes it can intensify some kind of religious conflict. So in 1990, when Mars was retrograde in Gemini, and I was actually born with Mars retrograde exactly on Aldebaran, there was we were headed towards the Gulf War at that time, and tensions were bubbling up in Iraq. You look at when Mars was on Aldebaran in 1945, in August 1945, That was not a religious war, but obviously that was with the tragedies in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like that was when Mars was conjunct Aldebaran. So Mars conjunct Aldebaran is highly significant as a transit because if you've seen some of my deeper, more long-term forecasts, I think in 2026, April 2026, specifically when the lunar nodes are kind of squaring off with Aldebaran and Antares, which are two fixed stars associated with religious wars. I think by April 2026, there's an all-out global conflict, global war. You could call it the Third World War. Like I feel like that is still, unfortunately, where the astrology is headed. And I think that's something around August, like could be significant of this year towards that time period when Mars is conjunct Aldebaran. Because by 2026, Mars will be in Aries in that April timeframe I'm talking about, with with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, Chiron in Aries, still a new moon in Aries. Like April 2026 is absolutely daunting, but I think that here there's something connected to it. And again, I would say there's probably an escalation of conflict in the Middle East in August because of that. And I think it involves Iran. I think it involves Israel, obviously, and maybe Yemen. But I think it'll, of course, affect oil. I think it will affect oil supplies as well. And and this Leo new moon, August 4th. Unfortunately, a lot of the chart aspects on the Leo new moon are reminiscent of August 1945. I'm not saying it's a literal repeat of August 1945, but August 1945, we had Mars Aldebaran, and a number of other aspects, by the way. I think the lunar nodes are in this case exactly squaring. But let me confirm that because I don't want to make that up. I believe when I was researching last night, there was something about a square to the lunar nodes there. So let me just quickly calculate that. Yeah, so go back to August 1945, right? Obviously, the sun would be very close to where it is during the Leo new moon, but then we have the lunar nodes squaring each other. We have Mercury in the exact same position. We have Mars in the same position. We have Uranus conjunct Jupiter. So that is very bizarre to me. And just to kind of like double down on some of these themes, around August 19th, that Leo new moon, ignore that, the Aquarius full moon, it is hearkening back to another time period that plays a big role in the sort of the theater of war, and that is February 16th, 2022. So it's kind of a reverse of February 16th, 2022, but with some other very telling alignments, like the North Node. Uranus is where the North Node was at that time. Chiron is, or the North Node will be where Chiron was at that time, and the Sun and Moon are flipped. And Mercury aligned with Pluto. So I said back in like January 2022, I was very early in my astrology career. It was like, one of the first videos I ever made. I said that February 16th, 2022 would be the most significant day of 2022. And 3 days later, Russia invaded Ukraine. So I think that it's possible that this Aquarius full moon, which by the way is squaring not only the lunar nodes from that time, but is squaring the current position of Uranus. I think that the war with Russia and Ukraine is entering a new phase in that way too. It's entering a new phase. So again, we have the Middle East. That situation continuing to intensify, I think, in August, and same with Russia, Ukraine. And again, in the bigger picture, this is all leading, I think, to April 2026, when I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be some kind of draft even in the United States. I think that that's the prediction I feel the most sort of conviction about. I really think that there's going to be a draft in April 2026. Now, I'm not like, it depends on a lot of factors. I'm not going to say that I'm 100% confident in that prediction right now because it's so far out. But if you just look at that time period, it's pretty messed up. I mean, I guess we'll just go there right now. April, I think it's 17th is the new moon or something. Or it's the day before. yeah, April 16th. I mean, look at that. Look at all those alignments. You have, Pluto and Aquarius at that point, obviously. You have Mars, Neptune, Saturn all together, which kind of means that people are fighting on behalf of a cause and on behalf of an ideal and on behalf of a nation in a lot of ways. So there's an element of sacrifice there. And the new moon is aligned with Chiron down to the degree. And you look at the position of the lunar nodes squaring Aldebaran and Antares, still, it's 2 degrees off, but I still count it. So, and in early 2025, you have Mars retrograde squaring Chiron. It's just all the roads are headed this way. So if you're nervous about the political stuff or whatnot, I mean, yeah, I get it. But I think there's kind of a bigger story here. But I don't want to leave you in this part of the prediction with just like, any kind of seemingly bad news. We can still control the timeline. And I was talking to my friend today about this. Like she was, my friend Jen, JK Ultra, she's great. You should check out her content. I mean, she was saying to me like, yeah, we can still control the timeline here. Like, it doesn't have to be all like we're just passively taking in the news. Like, we can, yeah, we can still engineer the timeline. We can still set the timeline and create that sort of, not utopia, but just a better world where we are more conscientious and conscious. And but by 2032, I know that sounds like a long time, but it's a blink of the eye in the span of the universe. Saturn and Uranus are aligned in Gemini, near the fixed star Betelgeuse, technically, I think, by the time they align. Yeah, because they align at 29 degrees of Gemini, I think, or something like that. And or somewhere around there. Yeah. But anyways, so by 2032, I really like that Saturn Uranus conjunction. I think it's kind of like, creating the new system, solidifying the new system. But until then, there's a little bit of tumultuousness. But I think, by navigating the transits and understanding what the upsides are of the transits, you can obviously create a much better world than where we are now. Because again, yeah, it's scary because everything's being destabilized, but it's really just the old guard transitioning out. We're transitioning out of the, centralized, cold, technocratic, bloodless bureaucracy. We're transitioning out of the fallacy of globalization and globalism, like the idea that if we outsource jobs completely, that it's like great for us. Like, I mean, it's obviously there's AI and there's other questions that I'm not going to get into right now, but it's like if we keep raising the frequencies and we get out of the fear and the division, especially the two-party system, then I think that there's a much better world in 2032 that is um that we dictate the terms of, and that is based around community with Pluto and Aquarius, that is based around a sort of an understanding of energy and frequency and vibration. So anyways, I know I just sort of zapped into a lot of different timelines there. But yeah, so some other transits I want to talk about. We do have Mars square Mercury August 1st. And so in early August, I think that, you may feel slightly argumentative and rushed and impatient, but, still very cerebral and you're in a problem-solving mood. First few days of August, we also have Venus square Uranus, so sudden changes in your values or your relationships. And in the political sphere, maybe there's some activist movements springing up, and maybe some people are investing in like interesting technology around that time. And then we have the Leo new moon, of course, August 4th, right before Mercury stations retrograde. So technically the new moon, you want to start something new, set intentions, but because Mercury's stationing that day, set intentions to complete something, to wrap something up that was already on your mind. And, it's also kind of difficult to set intentions here because the full moon in Aquarius 2 weeks later is square Uranus. So it brings the unexpected. But I still think you can set intentions if you're thoughtful about it. And then Mercury retrogrades from 4 degrees of Leo or 4 degrees of Virgo to 21 degrees of Leo from August 4th to 28th. And Mercury retrograde in Virgo has us rethinking our processes, our routines, our health. Retrograde in Leo has us rethinking our creative hobbies and pursuits and our, reevaluating our romantic lives. Does our relationship or our relationships spark that joy, cultivate joy, or are they languishing? You have to figure that out. And then when we get into, middle of August, we have Mars conjunct Jupiter and Gemini. So like you are going to be able to channel into the future. You will possess a certain clairvoyance, even if you're not clairvoyant naturally. I think near Aldebaran, it's like people are getting into flow states. People are, and this is based on my own research, but people with Aldebaran active in their chart can definitely channel, sometimes even speak random intergalactic languages, and they can do stream of consciousness writing. And I think a lot of you should be writing a book this month. A lot of you will be writing a book this month. I think that's a great way to use this transit. And Mars in Gemini plus the Sun in Leo is all about finding magic in your local environment, Gemini's neighborhoods. So exploring your local neighborhood, biking, just walking, running, exploring, and connecting with people creatively. So that's how you can use August to your advantage. Do something fun. Go to an improv comedy show. Again, bike around your neighborhood. Talk to your neighbors. Have fun. Gemini's siblings. Maybe, reconnect with your siblings. But remember, go back to those predictions I had earlier. Maybe some issues there if you're traveling longer distance. And then Jupiter squares Saturn. So this is a major check-in on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of December 21st, 2020 at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So this is they're squaring off with each other, which is like, okay, some of the new ideals and visions we established at the end of 2020 are now being tested. Maybe some of the innovations from that time are being litigated and investigated. If you can read between the lines there. And, I think that just optimism is being tested there. And so in your own life, you have to reconcile the galvanizing energy of Mars and Jupiter, the sort of springing into action, and the desire for expansion and exploration and travel. You have to balance that with your obligations with Saturn. So it's like the energy of like, I want to go to Bali, but my boss needs me to work, or I feel guilty that I have to finish this project or something. So balance your opportunities with your, obligations. And this is persisting throughout much of August. August 18th. Oh, sorry. Let me back up there. August 13th and 14th are probably the biggest days of the month. The Sag moon creating a mutable grand cross. I feel like that's where there's some kind of travel fiasco, I'll call it, whether it's a boating incident, a flying incident, or weather-related incident, or a telecommunications shutdown, or a controversial leakage of a conversation, maybe of a politician. And some really serious litigation potentially in the pharmaceutical space or something like that. So that is really like the core, and it's right in the middle of August. I'm just kind of like feeling that. Then we also have a Cazimi, Mercury Cazimi, August 18th with Venus opposing Saturn. August 18th, a lot of you will realize whether or not you want to commit to a relationship long term, or if you want to walk away from one. Remember, the last time Venus was in Virgo opposing Saturn was the solar eclipse in Libra, October 2nd of last year. That was kind of a disaster for a lot of people's relationships. And so in this case, with Mercury retrograde and a Cazimi there, you may be reflecting on the past and realizing, oh, that person was actually really good for me. Or, oh, no, this relationship I'm already in is really good for me. And if you're not romantically entangled in anything right now, this could be a creative partnership that you form, a professional partnership. So if you're trying to manifest some kind of strategic partnership, do so on August 18th. If you don't know where a relationship is going, wait until August 18th to really decide what direction you want to take it. And then August 19th, we have the Aquarius full moon at 27 degrees of Aquarius, which again is the flip of February 16th, 2022, that full moon in Leo. Feels like something with Russia and Ukraine is coming to and is entering a new phase. But again, it could even be in the Middle East. And I think there's something cybersecurity related here with Uranus, but also something seismic and geological, like an earthquake, and ultimately unexpected. Oh, and by the way, August 13th and 14th, there is some kind of something interesting going on for both Harris and Trump. Kamala Harris has Mars and Jupiter in her first house around the convention, so she'll probably give a very galvanizing speech. The Mars and the Jupiter Mars conjunction is on Trump's Uranus. So something volatile or unexpected may occur around August 13th, 14th for him. So as we go a little bit further into August, we continue to have the Mars-Saturn square, the Jupiter-Saturn square, which again is really with Mars and Saturn, it's kind of like you have to discipline your desires. You have to rein them in. You have to prune them. You have to focus your energy. Because Mars is not unimpeded. It's kind of hindered by Saturn there. And Saturn is saying, focus your words, focus your efforts. You can't say everything. You can't do everything. You can't travel everywhere right now. August is kind of, I don't want to call it a letdown month, but it does feel like there's something we all have to give up for the sake of our obligations, or there's some kind of delay we all have to experience. And then, when Mercury's retrograde, it's going to square Uranus around that time as well. So I just feel like with that square around the Aquarius full moon, I think it's a cybersecurity incident. I think it's an IT related incident. And it may ripple out and affect, travel or the airline industry or the telecommunication systems. And maybe it's weather related, but I think telecoms are really in a complicated position here. So, yeah, because Mercury's going to retrograde in a square to Uranus when, during the CrowdStrike outage, Mercury was direct in square Uranus. So Mercury retrograde is here probably showing us the extent of that major outage. And then towards the end of August, we do eventually get Venus opposing Neptune and Mars squaring Neptune. Like August 27th, for example, looks really bizarre. I wouldn't really trust what people are telling you August 27th. I feel like there's someone in your life who's trying to deceive you around August 27th. And 28th, Mercury station's direct. So maybe you wake up to the delusion all of a sudden or something. And yeah, I mean, and then after that, Venus goes into Libra very briefly at the end of August there. We'll conjoin the South Node, and I'll talk about that more in September, but that could certainly, beget a release of a relationship that is karmically unnecessary at this point. And then Mars square Neptune at the end of August gives me a little bit of just underscores the risks of traveling on the water or doing anything travel related while there's inclement weather. I mean, again, as a public astrologer, like I feel like I have a responsibility to both not fearmonger, but also to tell you the truth. And I think to tell you the truth that just August is just gives me a weird feeling in my nervous system whenever I talk about like communication, travel, transportation, networks, oil supplies. It just all feels very messy. And then even politically, I just think there's a lot of headaches going on there of like nobody can agree on anything, who the candidates should be, who the VP should be, or what the platform should be. And there's a lot of subgroups and factions forming. So let me just quickly make sure I didn't miss anything there. Oh, Mercury is also in conjunct to Neptune around August 13th and 14th. So yet again, I just feel like there's some absolutely bizarre thing going on with transportation. It's like, I don't know if we lose a communication with something, we can't find it somewhere in the water. Like that's just the image I keep getting there. or there's someone stranded or something. It just feels like there's something in the news that just feels like a bit of a nail biter. Yeah, I think I covered it. Oh, and Chiron recently stationed retrograde, July 26th. So you may be reflecting on your healing journey, which I think we can all agree, for all of us probably, the Chiron North Node conjunction, February 19th, I think, of this year. Major breakthrough in our healing journeys. So, anyways, just a couple more wrap up things for the key themes. I think we are, again, transitioning out of the old guards. So don't be worried if you're feeling unstable right now or something. I do feel like it's leading us to a good place, though. Like, again, we're shaking up stagnant energies. Um, we are no longer kowtowing to, well, we're no longer like assimilating into a monolithic culture. Like Pluto and Aquarius is honoring the individual. So I think that, again, that Saturn-Uranus conjunction in 2032 is really, I think, validating our authenticity. But also recognize that we are in the last dying gasp of the age of Pisces. So yes, I think there are religious wars coming. I think we are in the throes of a third world war already. I think the world war began when Russia invaded Ukraine. And even though different countries may or may not even hold a certain religious position or affiliation, I still think it's a religious war ultimately. And that is because we're transitioning out of the age of Pisces over the next 100+ years into the age of Aquarius, where individuation is possible, but requires us to, there's a revolution there in Christ consciousness where everyone is sort of waking up individually in their own mind, moving up the chakra system and so on. But there's sort of a last dying gasp of like sort of these monolithic religions. So that's what we're seeing right now. Because that model, that faith-based model centered around religion, it doesn't work anymore. And maybe I'm just giving you my personal opinion all of a sudden, but I just feel that way. But it's like if you're watching this video, you're probably already like individualistically spiritual, so you're probably not really off the same, you're on the same page, probably. And again, middle August time frame, possible travel delays. And I think there may be some like, again, weird complications during the Democratic convention or something, or weird procedural breakdowns that make things complicated in November. Just getting a download about that. Like administrative complications. Like a lot of boring stuff that people don't want to pay attention to, but that actually really matters during the election. And then again, a lot of drama in the airline and aviation industry. And then maybe some exposure to underlying vulnerability in the economy. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the predictions for each zodiac sign, and you're going to want to prioritize your rising sign, and then after that, track your sun and moon. So your rising sign is of primary importance because that dictates, the houses of your birth chart. It is based on your birth time. And, the sun and moon, though, are still part of who you are at your core. And what I've noticed in my own research is that you can make predictions based on your sun and moon. The sun would be affected primarily in terms of your outer expression, the moon in terms of your, internal emotions and feelings around things. But, keep in mind that transits to the sun, moon, and rising will have some, not all, similarities because the aspects actually have an affinity with the houses. So if you have, let's say, Venus in an opening trine to your sun, so let's say Venus is in Virgo and you're a Taurus sun. Venus in an opening trine to your sun is not dissimilar to Venus being in a fifth house aspect or being in the fifth house for a Taurus rising. Now, again, it's not the exact same, but a Taurus sun could benefit in a similar manner to a Taurus rising in the sense that, well, okay, whether Venus is actually in the fifth house, according to your rising sign, or if it's in an opening trine to your sun or something, in both cases, you can activate the fifth house themes of like creativity, romance, and joy, and you can benefit from those things. Just like if you have an opposition, you're conjuring the nature of the seventh house. So let's say you're a Virgo moon and you have Saturn opposing your Virgo moon right now in Pisces, it may feel with the moon feelings, it may feel like you have to commit to somebody or walk away from somebody. Just like a Virgo rising would be most directly experiencing those things with Saturn in their seventh house. So, anyways, it's all to say, track your rising sign first, then look through your sun and moon. And if your sun and moon are in the same sign, they probably hold equal weight actually to your rising sign in this forecast. So yeah, it all comes down to derivative charts basically. And also one more thing about the predictions that I just kind of channeled. I think Mars and Gemini, I just see a lot of ugly, ugly political dialogue in mid-August. So I don't know if it's like campaign ads that are like really nasty, or the candidates are just saying things about each other that are like, you know, probably uncalled for at a certain point. Like I could see a lot of that happening in the middle of August for sure. So, anyways, without further ado, let's look at the transits. So, what does the month ahead look like for Aries? Let's start with Aries. So, Aries, you have the new moon in Leo first off, August 4th, but I'm showing August 3rd here just so I can cycle through the rising signs throughout the video. You have the Leo new moon August 4th in your fifth house of, well, romance, creativity, and joy, athletics, recreational activities, and so on. So obviously, that sounds positive, and I think it can be for you. You may want to birth a new project or creative pursuit that, really sparks joy within you. Mercury is about to retrograde during that new moon in your sixth house. So maybe you're reflecting on how you can shuffle around your daily routine for these creative activities. And then Mars and Jupiter are conjunct in your third house. So as an Aries, you're a very powerful communicator this month. You are witty, funny, humorous, and probably are investing a lot of time into writing there or teaching or education or conversation. So yeah, as an Aries, this is a great time to start some kind of writing project or book or especially a creative writing project. Yeah. And we do have Venus square Uranus from the 5th to the 2nd. You could find a unique monetization strategy there. Or you could be very excited by a date that you're going on. Now, keep in mind you still have Saturn and Neptune retrograde in your 12th. So some of you may be tending to like mental health topics, or you may be tending to you may be focused on wellness and holistic wellness still. Chiron is retrograde in your first, so you are reflecting on your healing journey from the beginning of the year. But I think the Leo new moon ultimately activates joy in your life. And again, you're going to be in a very communicative mood. So I think you have one of the better months of August, actually. Now, Mercury will retrograde in your fifth eventually, so you could be rethinking, maybe there's a casual situationship that you're going back to, or they're coming back to you. But now I want to jump to the Aquarius full moon, August 19th in your 11th house, and T-squaring Uranus and Venus opposing Saturn. So I'm not going to actually jump to that screen for the sake of sort of, it would get very complicated if I had to switch constantly. But yeah, the Aquarius full moon is in your 11th. So that's a climax or a peak or a culmination of something in your communities or your friend groups, your networks. And, the chart ruler Saturn is opposing Venus and Virgo. So, or at least one of the chart rulers. So you could be making you could be forming a very strategic alliance with a coworker. You could be committing to a certain work project, or you could be dedicating assets or money towards some kind of fitness program, or you may be changing up your diet or something. And in other cases, you may feel sort of separate from a partner due to like contrasting daily routines or something. But a lot of you may be committing to a new work project or something. The other chart ruler, Uranus, again, is T square the sun and moon from the 2nd to the 11th to the 5th. I mean, that could be a range of things. Could actually be a very creative activity with a group of people, maybe going to a concert, maybe playing a concert, maybe just engaging in a creative activity with a group. And I also wonder if that's something that you are something in your financial world, like maybe you are monetizing something you're doing on social media, or maybe you are experiencing a major shift in a community, or something like that. And then Jupiter and Mars are actually, again, also in a T square with Venus and Saturn from the 6th to the 3rd to the 12th. So there's a lot going on. I mean, it's a pretty busy, I mean, a very busy full moon. Um, so there's a lot of new ideas percolating for you this month as an Aries with Jupiter and Mars in the 3rd, but squaring off with Venus and Saturn, it feels like you have some work obligations that are getting in the way of this intellectual exploration. So it seems like you have a lot of pursuits going on at the same time. So if you can make time for something creative in a group setting, if you can make time for the pursuit of knowledge, and if you can make time for certain wellness and work commitments, then it seems great. But ultimately, I think this full moon is very unexpected. So I think you're most likely, if I'm thinking about like what would most Aries experience during this time, I think most Aries would experience a sudden perspective shift, or sorry, yeah, a sudden shift in the way you think about a community or a friend group that you're part of, or a sudden shift in the way you participate in that group or community. And for some of you, it could just be like a really fun time. You might just be going to a party, and that party is pulling you away from some kind of like other things you need to do for your health or your work or something, but you're like, whatever, I don't care. But I just think it's a very communicative month. So indulge these conversations because there's a lot of them coming. And let's go on to Taurus. So, Taurus, what's your August look like? Well, the Leo new moon, August 4th, is in your fourth house. So I think that is a new beginning around maybe where you're living or your family or your own role as like a caregiver or a nurturer is changing. Maybe your relationship to your own parents is changing there. With Venus still in the fourth, you could be, I don't know, decorating your home, beautifying your home in some way, hosting people for a social gathering at your home. But I think for a lot of Tauruses, this new moon is establishing a new family dynamic of some kind. Um, Mercury does station retrograde shortly thereafter in your fifth house, so you may be reflecting on your creative hobbies at the same time. And Mars and Jupiter are conjunct in your second house of money, so as a Taurus, you may be spending a lot of money on travel, or you may be pursuing with a reckless abandon more money or some kind of like um, financial opportunity. And you could also be investing in your writing and rediscover a natural talent for writing, or even you could cultivate that skill, of course. And Saturn and Neptune are still retrograde in your 11th, so you are looking at your friendships with a more realistic lens than before, I think. Because the retrograde forces you to, like, in Pisces, reflect on whether or not you've been fantasizing or idealizing certain figures. So you're seeing your friendships with a much more realistic eye. Venus squares Uranus, so you may be from the first to the fourth, you may be changing the way you invest in your home. You may be changing where you actually want to live and what you value in a certain location. And you may be going to some kind of group gathering with your family or something, or engaging with your family in a group setting. So then we also have the Aquarius full moon, August 19th, in your 10th house. So that's very significant. And that could be the end point of a career. You no longer want a certain career, especially square Uranus. It's like, kind of done with that. It's no longer inspiring to me. And like, if a career that you have right now is very limiting, then I think you would want to kind of get out of that career. You may just come up with this genius idea for how to, excite and electrify your career. You may suddenly have to change jobs for some reason because of some upheaval there. And I think generally, well, before I say that, you could just like change your perspective on your parents there suddenly, or you may change your own role as a parent, like suddenly want to become a parent or something. And and just to kind of go through some of these other meanings here, keep in mind that Jupiter and Mars is in a T-square with Venus and Saturn. So at that time, Venus is in your fifth, opposite Saturn in the 11th. So there's actually a lot of activity here in the creative realm, I think. You could make a change to your creative investments, and you could form a partnership of some kind that helps you manifest more creative projects or something. And ultimately, though, I think that for a lot of you, like I don't dislike this month for you. I mean, I think that there's some sort of natural talent, right? Innate ability that you've always had that you can suddenly build some kind of creative track around or creative position or job around. And um maybe there's like a friend group or a friend or a friendship standing in the way of that for some reason, or maybe there's a community that you have obligations towards that you have to invest in. But otherwise, I think that with Venus going into the fifth house, it could even be like a romantic relationship that you suddenly want to commit to or something with Venus opposite Saturn. Like, I could see how a casual fling gets more serious. And I didn't talk about this for Aries, by the way, so I apologize. But, remember that Mars and Jupiter square Saturn, August is really defined by kind of balancing or reconciling these sort of competing priorities. So here it's like you have a clear desire to pursue more money or invest or spend more money. I think a lot of you are probably spending a lot of money there, especially on travel. But then Saturn the 11th is like, don't forget your obligations, maybe towards your social media or towards a certain friend group or community or political organization, like whatever it is. You have to balance those things. Just like Aries actually has to balance their desire to like communicate, socialize with a lot of people with their own wellness journey with Saturn in the 12th of like addressing their mental health and not just running away from their maybe challenges by just going out and partying or something. I don't know. That could be like one of the themes, at least for Aries. So yeah, for Taurus, also Mercury retrograde in your fourth. Maybe you're reconsidering again where you want to live, or you're dealing with some complications with your home or property. So now, Geminis, you have the Leo new moon in your third house. So your third house is the domain of like, local travel, and writing, and education, and siblings, and daily communication. So with a Leo new moon in the third, you could be launching some kind of new creative project. You could be, you know, launching a new, writing or communications project. You could be starting to think about or take a trip. And, the big transit, though, is the fact that you have Mars and Jupiter in your first. So you're really at your full power and strength. You're wanting to take more out of life. You're wanting to explore the world, and you're wanting to just take new adventures. So a lot of you are traveling at this time, I think. And Saturn's in your 10th, so you're really feeling pressure in your career, but I think that Saturn is really helping you manifest something big out of that pressure. So Geminis, you're feeling bold, and I think that this can help vault you to another level in your career. Mercury is going to retrograde though in your fourth house at first and then back into your third. So in early August around this new moon, maybe some complications with your home or property, maybe some family members from your past suddenly you're reconnecting with. And then as it goes into the third, you could receive kind of like a text or a phone call from someone from your past. And Venus square Uranus, some interesting insights coming in from the spiritual realm there that could help you write. So again, if you're trying to write as a Gemini, you could really be channeling a lot of that material. And then we have the Aquarius full moon, August 19th in your ninth house. So the ninth house, I talk about this every time I make a video, but the ninth house I've noticed in my research, natally in a birth chart is a big deal, obviously. You always have to reconcile with that or use that energy in a certain way towards the ninth house activities of like higher education or long distance travel or the higher mind. But I've noticed that in transits, the ninth house doesn't always is not always top of mind. It's not always at the forefront of someone's experience. But in a full moon in the ninth, especially square Uranus, for Geminis, you're probably completing that trip I talked about in early August, or coming back from a long distance trip, or maybe you are taking a trip overseas, especially. But with the T square to Uranus, I don't know if that trip goes as you plan it to. It feels a little bit I don't know, frustrating at first. Maybe there's some delays. You end up in an unexpected place there, and like, Jupiter and Mars squaring Saturn. It does feel like maybe it just takes more time for you to get to your ideal location. So like I said, usually the ninth house can be a little bit under the radar, but in this instance, I really think for Geminis, you may have some travel complications in August, on the August 19th full moon. So plan ahead for travel delays, essentially. And some other manifestations of this full moon, you could be completing an educational course, could be realizing you'd like to change your educational course, maybe are stepping into a teaching role suddenly out of nowhere. You may seek to learn something about spirituality or astrology of sorts. And the ninth house, I have noticed, has some associations with publishing. So if you're a Gemini who's been trying to write the book and you have been making progress throughout the month of August, maybe there is a sudden publishing opportunity or distribution opportunity here coming through an unexpected ally or through some kind of digital platform. And yeah, don't forget that Saturn, Neptune retrograde in your 10th right now. Like, this is really supposed to be a peak and a pinnacle in your career, this whole Saturn Pisces transit of 3 years or so. Between now and February 2026, like, you really have to show up and meet expectations, either as a parent or as a worker, like, if you're a Gemini, you're like, I don't have a job, I don't care to have a job. Like, okay, well, then it might be something with some kind of parenting or managerial role. But again, as Gemini, Mars, Jupiter in your first, I think is auspicious in a way. I do think you have a lot of power there. And then with Venus, by the way, Venus in the fourth and on that full moon, you could be making commitments to investing in a certain property. And you could be reaffirming even like maybe you're reaffirming a commitment towards just like being part of a certain family, or being like, I don't know, you're solidifying a relationship dynamic, like where you're like agreeing to certain family obligations. But I think for a lot of you, you're probably investing in property or something, or maybe you're traveling. I think a lot of Geminis are traveling. They're just kind of like wandering, and maybe they are considering suddenly Airbnb for a whole month in a different place. Like, I think a lot of Geminis are just completely away from their traditional environment at this time. So, continue to soul search. But like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, or sometime in the video, like, Jupiter and Mars square Saturn, I get that you want to explore to the edges of the earth, but you have obligations in your career or as a parent that you have to heed right now. You have to pay attention to. So you have to reconcile those competing priorities. Wanting to explore, start anew with those expectations. Because if you completely wander off, I feel like there's probably a cost to that at some point when Saturn goes direct, November 15th. Like you want to make sure that you're continuing to nurture and cultivate your career. So now we have Cancer risings. Cancer risings, the Leo new moon, August 4th, is in your second house of money, natural talents, and values. So this could be a new income for you. This could be an investment in your creative hobbies or something, or you know, because like the Leo energy in the second house, like you have natural talents in the creative space. So why not, you know, invest in those? And Mars and Jupiter, though, are in your 12th house. So you've got some really crazy dreams going on, probably. Your sleep cycle just feels a little bit unhinged. I think, yeah, insomnia may be a problem right now for some cancers, especially if you're traveling. Your sleep cycle is probably way off right now. I think a lot of cancers are traveling, and that's why their sleep cycle is off. But again, the Leo new moon, I don't think is negative. I think it could definitely, um, again, be the birth of a new salary, new income stream, or again, an investment in your creativity. Venus squares Uranus from the 2nd to the 11th. Maybe you're finding a new social media strategy or a way to monetize something in a group setting. Maybe you're changing up your friendships all of a sudden. Maybe you're just doing something fun in a group setting, going to a party, doing something online with Uranus in the 11th. Mercury will station retrograde during that time in the 3rd. So good time to wrap up a good time to wrap up a writing project. Good time to wrap up an educational course or to have a conversation to close the loop with someone. And then eventually Mercury will retrograde in your 2nd house. So you're rethinking some of your financials or money situations, or you know, rethinking how you can deploy your natural talents especially in the creative space. So Saturn and Neptune are retrograding your 9th. You are definitely reevaluating your entire worldview, maybe where you want to travel, where you want to, but also the higher mind that you want to cultivate and explore. And then the Aquarius full moon is on August 19th in your 8th house of shared investments and resources, finances, rebirth, regeneration, procreation. So the Aquarius full moon in the 8th house, square Uranus in the 11th. I think some of you could be pivoting your investments very unexpectedly. Some of you could also honestly have some kind of like subconscious awakening. And yeah, others are experiencing some kind of surprising. They're having you're maybe having an unexpected like experience with someone that's very intimate. And then, you know, Mars and Jupiter will square Saturn. So you probably want alone time to write or something, but you have obligations maybe towards like other coursework or travel plans or something. But a lot of cancers, I think you want to nurture your spiritual life right now. Meditate, be in a place of isolation. But Saturn is saying, hey, you got to travel here. You have to study this right now, or you have to focus on cultivating your perspective or becoming a thought leader, or you have to focus on your publishing. I think a lot of you are going behind the scenes to try to finish a book and you're trying to get it published, but not all of you, of course. And then Venus will be in the 3rd, opposite Saturn. So you could be investing in a trip, a journey, or having a very serious conversation with someone about the future of a relationship of any kind, by the way. It could be, and actually, this could be the 3rd and the 9th. Maybe you are talking to some kind of publicist or book agent or some marketing person who can help you. And you know, even around that time, Mercury will be squaring Uranus. So maybe you're communicating with a group or experiencing some glitches on social media, or you're miscommunicating with a group or something like that. Now we have Leos. Leo, you have the new moon in your first house or in your sign. So the Leo new moon, August 4th, really promising. I mean, this is a reset, a reboot, rejuvenation. So like really use this new moon to like reset, recharge the batteries, definitely set intentions, even though Mercury is about to retrograde. And, this is kind of what you make it. This can be the beginning of anything related to you, some kind of new you. And, Venus squares Uranus from the 1st to the 10th. I think many of you may be making some kind of pivot in your career, or maybe you're shifting your relationship towards a parent or your view of parenting. And I don't know. I think a lot of you want to change things up in your career, but you could also form some kind of exciting professional partnerships, I think, when Venus squares Uranus to the 10th. Uranus on the 10th is more communal, it's different, it's unconventional. So Venus square Uranus, maybe there is like a professional connection that you've been looking for a while. Jupiter and Mars in the 11th, doing a lot of traveling, maybe with a friend or with a friend group, or you're investing a lot of time in like parties, social events, talking, communicating with friends. Yeah, and then Saturn and Neptune are retrograde in your 8th. So many of you are probably rethinking your investing strategy, maybe doing some tedious tax related things or refinancing. And also, though, probably sort of reflecting on how you can sort of transcend any addictive behaviors, actually, trying to overcome any addictions, possibly. Now, Mercury will retrograde in your first house this month, by the way. And so you're possibly going to miscommunicate frequently, but you also may be rethinking, revisiting things, and it could be a very productively reflective time. The full moon is August 19th in your 7th house, so that's a big deal. Square Uranus in the 10th. So to me, that means there's some kind of alliance or partnership that you're, well, maybe finding, but even like just it's culminating, where you're realizing, oh, I need to work with this person to further my career, or I want to cut off this professional partnership and sever those ties so that I can change my career path. I think a lot of Aquarius is, you're probably feeling a little bit limited by your current career. I think you want to break away from that right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if you like try to change up your career and maybe change up the relationships surrounding your career. Others, you could make some changes in your relationships, whether that's friendships or romantic connections. You may, and I talked about this already, but you may suddenly realize, just like Aquarius, I think I talked about this with Aquarius, right? Or no, actually with Taurus. I don't know. Maybe some of you are suddenly realizing you want to be a parent. That's a bit of a stretch, though. I would say that's probably not what's going to happen there, but like maybe there's something in the 7th house where you're talking with a partner about Uranus in the 10th. Do I want to be a parent or not? And what are the implications of that? But I think that's very niche. So to just kind of get back to the main point, I do think your significant one-on-one relationships are going through massive change at this time. Especially with that, that square to Uranus. And then Mars and Jupiter square Saturn. It feels like maybe some of your travels or your social activities are tempting you to like go back and revert back to a certain addictive habit. You're having to transcend that. Or maybe you're traveling so much that it's draining some of your investments or something. And yeah, I mean, you have to make a compromise there. I think that you want to do a lot of socializing, but I think with Saturn the 8th, you also have to spend some time addressing your finances, your financials, and again, doing some shadow work, doing some psychoanalysis. Oh, and then Venus will be in the second house, opposing Saturn. So yeah, I think around that Aquarius full moon, a lot of you will be making really serious financial commitments, investing commitments, and realizing maybe that your lifestyle suddenly is like has been clashing with some of your financial goals. So now we'll address Virgo. Virgo, you have the Leo new moon August 4th in your 12th house. 12th house is very liminal, spiritual, abstract, and isolated. So the Leo new moon could be a new spiritual practice, could be a new meditation practice, but it's really putting the focus on your spiritual life. And even like with the 12th house, ways in which you're devoting yourself to a certain spiritual cause. Some of you might just have like very, very interesting dreams at night that actually end up, percolating and leading to some kind of like creative project. Venus squares Uranus there from the 12th to the 9th. Maybe you're suddenly investing in a long distance trip, but others are maybe having a very unique, finding a really unique connection with someone, either while they're traveling or just someone who's very knowledgeable about a spiritual subject that just changes your entire approach to a certain spiritual activity. And for others, maybe there's a karmic relationship that's suddenly ending, or honestly, you could even like meet someone while you're traveling who has a past life connection to you. Mercury is going to retrograde in your first house, though, right after that. So early August, you are liable to have some miscommunication there. Might happen. And then we'll retrograde into your 12th. And that is reflecting on past life karma, your dreams, your spirituality, your mental health. I mean, there's a lot there, but you're reflecting, you're in a very philosophical, I don't know, kind of frame of mind there. I do like that Mars and Jupiter in your 10th. I probably should have led with that. I mean, that's a bright spot. Mars and Jupiter in the 10th, you are making bold moves in your career. You're leveling up in your career. I know a lot of Virgos who have talked about getting a new job. So, I mean, this is kind of a great time to go for a new job, actually, with Mars and Jupiter in the 10th, or even to create your own job as an entrepreneur. And others are probably traveling for work with those placements. And Saturn and Neptune retrograde in your 7th, you're continuing to really, really scrutinize closely the validity of your relationships, the sustainability of them. As a Virgo, you can't really idealize anybody anymore. Now, the Aquarius full moon, August 19th, is in your 6th house of like daily routines and work and health. So a lot of Virgos, you may complete a work project and move on to a different job. I think a lot of you are shifting jobs actually, August 19th. Some of you are making adjustments to your health practices. For the 6th house of pets, maybe suddenly you adopt a pet or you want a pet. And others are maybe being assigned a new work project because of some travel related obligations. So yeah, you want to evaluate your health and things like that. Diet, exercise, fitness. And then mid-August, we do have Mars and Jupiter square Saturn and square Saturn and Venus. So around that Aquarius full moon, again, August 19th, I think that's a new job because you have Venus in your first house. Opposite Saturn. Maybe it's a new job. Maybe it's a professional partnership that leads to entrepreneurship. And for some of you, you're balancing Mars and Jupiter with Saturn. So wanting to work a lot, wanting to travel for work, but having obligations towards a relationship or something. Now, a lot of Virgos around August 18th, actually, you will decide whether or not you want to commit to somebody long term. I really think that Virgo and Pisces, both of you are really having to solidify a partnership. That could be a creative partnership, but it could also be romantic. So I think your relationships will be very clearly defined after August 19th, whether that means they're beginning or they're ending. So now let's talk about Libra. Libras, I mean, you've been asking me to talk about you all year more than I have been. And I've really tried my best to cover all the signs in my videos on TikTok and Instagram, but I think that just know that I'll be talking about you a lot during the eclipse cycle in October. So, you can look forward to that. I mean, I think you're continuing to go through a year of like karmic resets. And the Leo, but to get into this time period, the Leo new moon is in your 11th house on August 4th. So this looks like maybe the birth of, maybe you're starting a new friendship. Maybe you're going to a social event or a gathering. If you're a social media creator, not a bad time to launch some kind of new social media related content. Maybe there's a creative performance that you're doing around this time. But remember, Mercury does retrograde that same day. So maybe it's more that you're finishing up a social media project, or maybe you're reconvening with some people socially that you already know. But Venus is squaring Uranus from the 11th to the 8th. So that enhances, I think, a little bit of the creative and social dynamics. So it's not all bad. With Uranus in the 8th, I think a lot of Libras lately in the last few years, I mean, you've probably found unique ways to monetize something or generate passive income. So maybe you're generating passive income here through some kind of group activity or social media activity. And do keep in mind that Mercury will retrograde in your 11th eventually. So you're likely to run into old friends that you fell out of touch with. They're coming back probably in August. Mars and Jupiter are conjunct in your 9th. I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of Libras are traveling across the world or to another state. Or if you're investing in your education, or maybe publishing. Like I talked about with Aries, maybe you're doing some writing, maybe you're getting some written works out there in the world. And Chiron retrograde in your 7th. I haven't really talked about Chiron retrograde for all the signs, but Chiron retrograde in your 7th, you are reflecting on wounds that you still have to heal through your relationships, which could be a range of things. I mean, it could be like, how do I end up trusting someone? How can I gain, how can I feel like trusted, and how can I trust somebody? How can I feel accepted and whatnot? And then the Aquarius full moon, August 19th, is in your 5th house of creativity, romance, athletics, recreation. So as a Libra, maybe August 19th, there is some completion of a creative work, major performance. Maybe you're going on a very unexpected date because it squares Uranus there. Yeah, I mean, I think it could be kind of a fun date for you. You may go on a date that, I mean, it's a little unexpected, but I think it could still pan out for you. And if you're creative, like you should if you're a Libra who's like a musician or something, like play a concert around the 19th. I mean, squaring Uranus in the 8th, you could generate some income through a creative performance or something. And remember that Saturn and Neptune are retrograde in your 6th. I think that's partly why it's a tough year for you, and the South Node in your 1st. A lot of you are going probably through some health challenges. You're reevaluating your health and your work process, and yeah, it's a lot to consider. So continue to evaluate those things. And then Venus is opposing Saturn on the Aquarius full moon. Venus in the 12th. Maybe it's a karmic or past life relationship that you're letting go of. I think a lot of Libras are actually letting go of I don't know if it's like a twin flame or some kind of karmic relationship, but you're probably letting go of it around August 19th. Or maybe you're committing to somebody that you have a past life connection with. And I think for Libras, the compromise you have to make this month with the Gemini Pisces square is that I think a lot of you do want to travel, you do want to explore new educational topics, or you want to write or something. But I think you have obligations towards your daily work and even towards your health. So the worst thing you could do as a Libra is just travel with no frame of reference or schedule or stability or consistency, and then like to the detriment of your health, right? Like you just want to mind those things. And you know, if you do have a job that you care about, like I don't think you can fully ignore it this month. Saturn the 6th, it's like, hey, get things done. So it's kind of the vibe. Scorpio, August, you have the Leo new moon in your 10th house of career, public image, parenting. So for Scorpios, you could start a new job, could take on a new responsibility, you could stand out in your career differently than before, could suddenly realize that you want to become a parent, could change the way you relate to your parents. And I think with Leo, you could, you know, you could do something creative in your career. Venus square Uranus. Maybe there is some exciting new professional connections you're making. Maybe you're suddenly monetizing something new in your career, you know, finding a new revenue stream. You're getting in front of a group of people there through your career. And there could be some changes in your significant relationships because Uranus is in your 7th. Mercury will retrograde in Virgo there, so you'll be reconnecting with friends or communities. Then eventually it will retrograde in your 10th. So yeah, maybe some miscommunication in your career, but it's also a good time to kind of re-strategize some things with your career, reflect on it, or finish up some major career-related projects. Mars and Jupiter are conjunct in your 8th, so you could be you could be investing more, focusing on your investments, making more passive income. You could be making more income off of like a writing or communications related thing. The 8th house is about procreation. So for some of you, maybe you, I don't know, maybe you're procreating or something. I don't know, you become a parent. Mars and Jupiter in the 8th is also, you know, really digging into the subconscious there. So I think for Scorpios, your psychic powers are at their peak, maybe at their biggest peak all year. So as a Scorpio, allow yourself to channel things like that. And again, maybe investigate your investing and financial strategy. Then the Aquarius full moon, August 19th, is in your 4th house of home and family and property and caregiving. So some Scorpios, you could be moving around August 19th. And it's T-squaring Uranus in the 7th. So you could be moving in with a partner could be moving in with you. You could be changing your location for the sake of a partnership. Others, you know, you could just be completing a home project or something. Or you could have a major change with the way you relate to a family member or a parent. And then Jupiter and Mars continue to transit the 8th house, but square Saturn in the 5th. It looks like maybe you want to do a lot of channeling, a lot of, you know, you want to focus on your monetization, your investing, but it's squaring off with Saturn, which is showing that you have obligations maybe towards your creativity or, yeah, I don't know. It's not like the worst houses to have in a square. I think they could actually support one another in a way. Like if you were ambitious about your creativity, you know, you could find ways to, I don't know, go into the 8th house with that. So to draw upon your psyche and your subconscious, and to transform in the way you communicate or go on a transformative learning journey and funnel that back into your creativity. But you know, I could also see how Saturn there is also about your dating life, and maybe you're feeling a little bit like limited in your dating life or something. But all in all, I don't think that's actually a bad position for the square. But I think you're coming up with a lot of new insights, again, in your psyche that are exciting you, but then it's taking some of the magic away from some of the other creative stuff you've been doing. And then Venus will be in your 11th house. So I think with Venus in the 11th, there could be some social media related investments that you're making, or there's a friendship that you're solidifying. there's a community that you're starting or a community you're participating in, or some kind of group-related creative project. So now we have Sagittarius. A Leo new moon, August 4th, is in your 9th house of travel, higher education, the higher mind, ethics, publishing. And so, yeah, for Sag, you could be taking a trip, you could be going to another country or just long distance. You could begin a new educational track. You could start to cultivate a new perspective on life. Venus will square Uranus from the 9th to the 6th. Maybe there's an exciting connection or friendship or relationship that you strike while you're traveling. And, maybe these travels are taking you away from some of your daily routines and scrambling them up. But yeah, I think the Leo new moon is perfectly nice for you. Mercury is about to retrograde in the 10th, though, so from August 4th to 14th. Be mindful of your communication in your career. You may feel like some things aren't going your way with your career. There's miscommunication with a manager or a parent, but it's also an opportunity to reflect on your career. Mars and Jupiter conjunct in your 7th. You're really looking to pursue new relationships at this time, or maybe even to travel with a partner. I think a lot of Sagittariuses are very adamant about finding a new partnership at this time. But it's squaring Saturn, right? So you have obligations maybe with your home or family. You have to take care of a family member. Maybe you just signed a lease and you can't travel right now. You're, tending to your home or something. So Sagittarius have to balance these competing priorities. Eventually Mercury will retrograde in your 9th. So you're rethinking some educational track or long distance trip or facing delays. I think Sagittarius, you may face some delays with your trip, late August. And let's go to the Aquarius full moon, which is in your 3rd house, August 19th. And that could be the return from a trip, could be the completion of a writing project, could be an emotional conversation with someone, square Uranus in the 6th. I think it's possible that maybe there's something changing about your routines or your work that requires travel, or you're traveling took away from some of your work. Uranus in the 6th can disrupt your health as well. So if you are traveling a lot, just be mindful of your health. Or maybe you're gaining new skills in the 3rd house that you need to apply to your work. If you're having a really emotional conversation with a coworker. And by that full moon, Venus is in your 10th, square Mars and Jupiter, opposing Saturn in the 4th. You could be making an investment in a home or property. You could be divesting from a home or property. You could be, that could even be a monetization of a career. I think for Sagittarius, there is probably a professional relationship that you could form. Sagittarius have one of the best opportunities here to, make that connection with someone who could really help you advance your career. But again, some of you're investing in a home. But I think that's your dichotomy right now as a Sag. Wanting to explore the world, but having to probably maybe even take care of a family member, right? With Pisces being about health, maybe you're taking care of a family member's health, or just meeting the expectations of someone in your home that you're living with, or your parents or something. And that's taking away maybe from some of your ambitions regarding travel or relationships or something. And some of you, again, could complete a writing project, though, which is really cool. So now we have Capricorn. So Capricorn, you have the Leo new moon in your 8th house, August 4th. A Leo new moon in the 8th house is potentially the genesis of a new financial or investing strategy, a new financial plan, merging your resources with a spouse or partner. talking about wills or inheritances with someone, or having an intimate experience with somebody, but also maybe investigating your subconscious or your shadows. And, Venus will square Uranus from the 8th to the 5th. That is, to me, again, maybe an exciting connection with someone that's romantic and intimate, or maybe a sudden change in your finances or investments, your passive income. Suddenly you devise a new financial strategy. That's kind of exciting. Maybe you make money off of something creative. Mercury will retrograde in your 9th. So from August 4th to 14th, expect some delays potentially when you're traveling. Mars and Jupiter in the 6th. I think you have a pretty busy work schedule right now that you're trying to reconcile with all the creative stuff you want to do. I think you're having a lot of conversations with coworkers. Maybe you just started a new job, or um, maybe you're traveling a little bit for work there. But I think for a lot of Capricorns, you're packing in a lot of activity into your daily work. And I think Mars, Jupiter in the 6th is great for health and fitness. This would be a great time to just devote energy towards a fitness routine or exercise class or something. Get the gym time, going. Get your gym time in. And then the Aquarius full moon is August 19th, and that's in your second house of money and financing and natural talents and values. Square Uranus in the 5th. So again, you could monetize something creative. You could shift your values suddenly. You could suddenly realize that your values are in line or out of line with a certain romantic connection that you have. Mercury will be retrograde in your 8th, so rethinking your financial strategy. So I think for Capricorns, maybe you're agreeing to a new salary on the full moon, actually. Maybe you're, ending with the full moon, ending a certain salary, beginning a new one. And Venus will be in Virgo in the 9th, opposite Saturn in the 3rd. I think a lot of you are, like I've said for a couple other signs here, you're trying to invest money or funding into a trip, or an educational program. I think a lot of Capricorns are spending money on something educational there. Maybe you're forming a long distance relationship or something. Maybe you're finding a kind of a serious relationship while you're traveling. And with Mars and Jupiter squaring Saturn, by the way, I think you have a lot of ambitions towards your fitness plans. Maybe you want to go to the gym a lot. Maybe you also have a really hectic schedule at work, or maybe you have a really socially active life during the workday where you're just talking to a lot of coworkers. But squaring Saturn in the 3rd, it's like, well, you have obligations though to maybe a schooling program or educational program, and there's a writing project you want to get to. So I think for Capricorns, you're really having to master a certain subject, maybe on the side, or maybe you are going to school while you also want to get a lot done in your day-to-day, other things. Like Gemini just wants a variety of things. So as a Capricorn, it's like you want to devote 2 hours to work, 2 hours to class, 2 hours to fitness, 2 hours to writing, 2 hours to creativity. And it's like kind of all over the place. And so, yeah, just balance those things. But I think for a lot of Capricorns, you are ultimately suddenly changing your financial plan, suddenly getting a new job offer, maybe, or suddenly valuing your creativity, or suddenly realizing you want to be with this person who you were just romantically involved with, like casually at first. Now we have Aquarius. Aquarius, the Leo new moon is in your 7th house of committed partnership, August 4th. New moon in the 7th. Yeah, maybe that is a new connection, a new alliance, a new relationship. And with Venus square Uranus, maybe you are starting a new relationship that changes where you want to live. Maybe you are socializing with people at your home. I mean, Aquarius, like August is a very romantic time. Mars and Jupiter in your fifth, like that's it's pretty potent. That's pretty spicy. So if you have a new moon in the seventh, like starting a new relationship with someone that has a creative undertone, romantic flair to it. Keep in mind that Mercury will retrograde though in your seventh house from August 14th to 28th. So you may be reconnecting with an ex, patching things up with an ex, getting closure with an ex, or an ex is coming back to complicate these new relationships in your life. But definitely for Leo's like, or sorry, for Aquarius is like this is the birth of some kind of new relationship, whether it's a friendship, business partnership, or romantic connection. And also, with Mars and Jupiter in the fifth, you could have a lot of success in your creative life, perform for a lot of people, do some kind of comedy, athletic. You can do something athletic. I think you're investing a lot of energy into your creativity. However, it's squaring off with Saturn in the second, which is saying, hey, remember your finances, your financial goals, your expenditures. Like, don't go too far with these things, maybe, or think about the impact on your finances, all the stuff you're doing right now with your creative life, and so on. So then we have the Aquarius full moon August 19th, and this will affect you obviously heavily because it's a full moon in your sign. So emotions will be heightened, intuition will be heightened. Square Uranus in the fourth. Some of you may be moving. Some of you may be investigating the financial impact or implications or ramifications of moving. Because Saturn, the other chart ruler, or sorry, the other ruling planet of the full moon, is in your second house of money. So Aquarius, you have a lot going on this month. I see like the romantic department going well. I see maybe some new relationships, but I also see the possibility that you would rather move somewhere else. You'd rather invest in your creativity and get rid of and walk away from this job that you're in. And then also also you get Venus, by the way, in your eighth house of finances and investments. So yeah, I think for a lot of Aquarius is that around that full moon, you probably are making some major overhauls to your financial and investing strategy, investing in a stock or investing in something or an asset class, investing in a home, investing in a move, investing in shadow work, maybe. I mean, Venus in the eighth can have a very secretive relationship, or it's an all-consuming, obsessive relationship. But I think for a lot of you, it's that full moon could be a little bit more about finances. But yeah, Aquarius, like if you were to start a relationship with someone, I think it happens this month. Even with Mercury retrograde, it's like maybe the ex comes back, you deflect, you ward them off, and then you find the person that you're truly creatively aligned with and passionately aligned with. So we're closing off with Pisces now. Pisces, you have the Leo new moon in your sixth house of daily routines, rituals, coworkers, work projects, pets. So some Pisces, you might get a new pet. Some Pisces, you might start a new work project. You might connect with a coworker. You might incorporate creativity into your day-to-day with Leo in the sixth. Venus squares Uranus from the sixth to the third. Technically, I'm showing Leo. Let me go back a day actually to change the equation there. Venus square Uranus. Maybe there's some work relationships, like co-working relationships that spark really interesting creative ideas or writing ideas. Maybe you're incorporating some kind of unique technology into your job. Maybe you're learning about some new trend or some new habit that can really help balance out your daily routines with Venus in the sixth. Mercury will retrograde in your seventh from August 4th to 14th. So, exes may return during that time. Or maybe rethinking or thinking about an ex, rethinking a partnership. Mars and Jupiter are in your fourth. So I think many of you also maybe want to travel away from the home or want to move even. But it is squaring off with Saturn in your first, which is showing obligations in a range of areas: work, relationships, health, and so on. And the Aquarius full moon, August 19th, is in your 12th house of past lives, karma, or karmic undoing, hidden enemies, spirituality, dreams, places of isolation, mental health. So the Aquarius full moon, I think, is a little trippy for you. Expect your dreams to be very vivid around August 19th, but also maybe very visionary. They're generating epiphanies that you could apply to your writing projects if you have any in the third house with Uranus. Just reflecting on your spirituality differently. You could be channeling around that time, connecting with spirits, spirit guides, addressing some mental health related things as well, and changing up your routines in order to achieve a sense of wellness. But I think the big theme for August for Pisces is actually relationships. I mean, because the Venus-Saturn opposition is occurring during that full moon. So I think for a lot of you, you're flushing out a relationship that you don't want because the full moon is in the 12th house of endings. For some Pisces, you're clearing space for better relationships. Other Pisces, you could devote. The 12th house is devotional, sacrificial. You could devote yourself to somebody, have a spiritual connection to somebody. But others are, you know, I think others are ending the relationship around August 18th, 19th, because there's a Kazemi on August 18th, so you're seeing something really clearly. But of course, that could be a professional partnership that you're striking in that 7th house of alliances, and Saturn has a very professional sort of archetype to it. Yeah, Mars and Jupiter, again, squaring off with Saturn. It's like maybe you want to move, you want to travel, but you have these other obligations with your work and maybe, yeah, with a relationship even. Like, you know, Venus opposite Saturn. I think that Pisces, you're making the ultimate relationship decision around August 18th and 19th. So what have we talked about tonight, today, wherever you are? August just feels like a bottleneck. August is a bottleneck. In what departments? With communication, telecommunication, utilities, transportation, logistics, oil supplies, boating, flying, driving, bicycling. I mean, you know, there's a lot of, and it's because of weather-related incidents, IT outages, cybersecurity incidents, and also the discourse is getting really messy in the political sphere. And I think that that will create a messy political environment in August. But you can reconcile all these competing priorities. Like I said, you can balance out August by leveraging the creative aspect of Leo, doing something creative, doing it in your local environment with Gemini, building in extra time for travel delays. You know, not freaking out, not canceling travel plans, but building in time for delays. Reflecting on your health, reflecting on your creativity with the Mercury retrogrades in Virgo and Leo. And also, yes, expecting the unexpected on the Aquarius full moon, August 19th, but allowing Uranus to electrify your life and shift your perspective very suddenly, shift your activities, shift your fortune, improve your luck. To hope that whenever all the upheaval is done, that your life is actually better off and more exciting. So in August, again, be mindful of what you say, be mindful of what you put out there, be mindful of all types of conversations you're having, because again, I see in August there's a potential for leakage of those conversations, rumors, you know, nasty dialogue. So don't contribute to that. And oh yeah, and if you're a writer, really invest in your writing. It's the time to get a publisher, an agent, yeah, to really discipline your approach to communication. So thank you so much. I'm Evan Nathaniel Grimm. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter where I have horoscopes, much more, I think even more in depth for a lot more of the transits that are going on, then, you know, so become a paid subscriber to the newsletter. We also have monthly chats there. My 2024 readings are sold out, but I will announce 2025 in the coming months, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, follow me on all the other channels as well, but especially my Substack newsletter, and I have an astrology podcast called Astrology Unbound, which you should also listen to. So anyways, thank you. I wish you the best of luck in August, and I will see you for the next prediction for September. So take care.